Hey, what's up guys, it's BenBonk, and welcome back to the 33rd Slimekeep devlog. In this devlog, I worked on a tutorial and fixed a boatload of bugs in the game. Also, if you're new here, Slimekeep is a fast-paced roguelike where you must kill and capture slimes to stop the corruption that has infected your land. Without further ado, let's get into it. First up, let's make a tutorial because pretty much every game needs one at some point. Like the credit screen shown in the last devlog, I want to make this tutorial a quite open experience, allowing the player to explore at their own pace. So I started out by just laying out some basic intro tutorial text in a new scene and laying out the foundation for the tutorial. Eventually, after just a bunch of head under work, I had the first basic chunk of the tutorial done, which was just general information. I planned on making a bunch of different info chunks scattered around the map and allowing the player to explore them in whatever order they want. And, well, I then just made all these individual chunks of the tutorial. Nothing super interesting here. But after that, I just went around adding some life to the tutorial chunks. I didn't want them to feel stale and not engaging, so I added a bit of interactiveness to certain elements, like how you can pick up these weapons to advance the weapons chunk tutorial. And then I just went around doing this for every chunk of the tutorial. Looking back, I know the current tutorial is a lot of text and stuff, which isn't really ideal, but I guess I tried to spice it up at least a little bit. Anyways, that's the tutorial right there. Nothing crazy, and it definitely could be better and more engaging, but I think it gets the job done for now. Next up on the list was a bunch more bugs to fix, because I swear for every bug I squash, 10 more pop up somehow. So I had a lot of work ahead of me based on feedback from my last playtest. Starting off, the final boss in the game, the Slime King, was so much more buggy than I realized. For example, sometimes the player could get permanently stuck in one of these corners during their King's lunge attack and just be dead eventually with no escape. Then, on top of that, when the player actually does die, the death screen wouldn't fully drop down, which is a bug I thought I fixed a while ago, but I guess not. Oh, and also the player could get stuck in between these spears during the same attack, and the spikes that pop up during the attack would leave behind their colliders after the attack finished, invisibly damaging the player. So yeah, a lot of stuff with the Slime King and the specific attack. But don't worry, I found a few solutions. First, I made it so that if the player stays on a spike for too long, it'll just teleport them to the middle of the room. Not the most elegant solution, I know, but it got the job done. I also added a spike to the entrance spears area to fix up that issue, and made sure the spike colliders are removed after the attack is over. Oh, and one more thing, I realized that the slime pet wouldn't actually attack bosses ever since I reworked its attack system, so I just added a few lines of code to get the pet attacking all bosses once entering a room. Moving on, I realized that there were some issues when the player restarted or beat the game with the new save and load system I made in the last devlog. So I wrote up some code that would allow me to delete a save profile, and added this functionality when the player either dies or beats the game. I also made it so that when the player hits restart, the game automatically creates a new save profile for that run. To show this in action, in-game I can head to the Slime King, defeat him, go back to the hub area, and boom, the save is gone. And speaking of being gone, I've personally gone to go wishlist Slimekeep myself using the link in the description because I know that it helps out with the Steam algorithm and it'll make BenBonk very happy. But next up, I realized that the slime pet doesn't have a shadow when attacking, so I gave him one, which helped a lot. I also found a bug where if the player sleeps without all their dashes replenished, they'll start the next day without those dashes and with no way to regain them, which was a pretty big issue. But as usual, I fixed up this issue pretty easily. Another relatively easy fix was adding descriptions to all the items in the Slimazon shop, which is something that I hadn't done before, but it just helped quite a bit with clarity in the game. Now, a not so easy fix was the issue where the player, if fast enough, could enter a room and leave it, causing the doors to close while the player wasn't even in the room. This issue took quite a bit of brainstorming and hacking away at things to solve. Eventually, I created a solution where I changed the door's closing logic to be a little more delayed to verify that the player was actually in the room. Now, I thought we were done right here, just after a few hours of messing around with the door's logic. But now, there was one minor issue that this solution created, which literally made me want to quit game dev. Not really, but basically if the player went into a room far enough and then backed out beyond the end of the corridor, the fog for that room would trigger. Now, I sort of knew why this happened because of how the door system and fog system works, but I literally could not figure out a viable solution to this issue for 2 whole days. The solution in question, adding one more clause to this door closing if statement. Yeah, I know, it's pretty embarrassing to admit this, but that's just the reality of game dev for you, I guess. But anyways, this solution seemed to work mostly. There are still a few instances where it can sort of break, but it's overall a huge improvement. Moving on, it was time to work on the mech boss. Compared to other bosses, this boss is a little plain, mainly due to the fact that he was the first boss I added to the game, and he really only has 2 attacks for the whole fight. So I wanted to give him a few more attacks to liven him up. First up, I want to make a sort of passive attack that would trigger after the player defeats the first phase of the boss. Imagine having just a bunch of little minion guys on the corners of the room who would throw out mech-related items such as wrenches or screws. So I made this quick animation and started setting these guys up in Unity. After a bit of basic programming, I made an early concept where this minion guy would fire out a projectile towards the player's position every few seconds. Then I made some art for these projectiles and added these minions to all four corners of the room. I tweaked some of the spawn rates, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this little addition. But for a major addition to the boss, I wanted to give him another main attack to spice things up. So I made this stomp attack, which was pretty easy to make as I could reuse the mech's idle animation. This attack would just launch a projectile towards the player. Simple, but a nice addition to this boss. Next up, I got some feedback that the game was just a little hard in later rooms, and I definitely agree with this, so I spent a bunch of time lowering the health of pretty much every enemy slime in the game to make them a little more fair. But after doing that, I noticed that sometimes when the player held down the capture gun and released it, they just couldn't switch weapons again for some weird reason. And yeah, all I really had to do here was just add like one if statement. But now for some more serious stuff. You thought we were done with the Slime King? Well, we're not, because this guy still had quite a few bugs, especially with the guard spear attack. Pretty much this would happen. Yeah, I don't really know, but we'll get back to that in just a second. For now, the more serious issue at hand was that for some reason, the slime guards couldn't perform their lunge attack. Their spears would point in the right direction, and the placeholder bombs right where the guards were supposed to move looked correct. But out of nowhere, the guards decided to no longer work and no longer move for no clear reason. I spent hours on this issue and felt completely lost, even after me constantly checking and fiddling with my seemingly error-free code. All hope seemed lost, and I don't think I've ever been more confused fixing a bug in game development in my life. But then I decided to check the animator for these slime guards and found this leftover scrapped animation that wasn't even being used or triggered ever in the game. But simply because this animation was attached to the guard's animator, the guards would be completely frozen in place because the animation apparently modified the guard's position. So I removed this animation and oh my gosh, the guards were working again. It felt good to figure this out after spending so long stuck on it, but at the same time, what the heck, Unity? Why does this happen? Regardless, remember this weird spear issue? Well, turns out all I had to do was remove yield return from this coroutine call. So yeah, issue fixed, I guess. But an issue that wasn't fixed was that apparently you can duplicate slimes in Slimekeep. Yeah, so one of my playtesters found this out, and if the player fails a capture on certain slimes, like the sleepy slime for example, he will duplicate. But only sometimes, which made this bug really hard to pinpoint. Though eventually I realized this was due to the slime's upgrade function, which would instantiate the upgraded version of slime once called and destroy the current slime. Turns out all I needed here was to add one missing line, being can upgrade equals false. Crazy how simple that fix was, but are you starting to see a trend here for this video? Small issues creating big messes. That's why I swear by the notion that bug fixing is majority just locating the cause of the bug rather than actually fixing it. Oh, and you thought we were done fixing enemy slime bugs? Wrong. Here, take this infinite assassin slime dash bug, or this slime stop moving when a failed capture bug, or even this shadow in the wrong position bug. Whole lot of messes there, but I did my best to fix those issues up. So now, thankfully we had fixed all these slime enemy bugs in the game.
Psych!
Oh no, the hacker slime tosses around the player when they try to capture it, and capturing its minions sometimes breaks the capture gun for no apparent reason. And I spent absolutely forever fixing these bugs, and it didn't help that they were extremely hard to recreate, and I'm just out of patience here. Let's just pretend those bugs didn't exist, because I eventually fixed all of them, and it took forever, and I had to rewrite the capture system again, and But after that, I made a new beta build of the game, fixed even more bugs, and yeah, you get the message by now. So that's all I have for this devlog. Again, I know it's a lot of bug fixing, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.